As my dad said one time, I think I'm losing my looks. And I think that's what's happening to our town. We're losing our looks. We're just a small rural community that's been affected by a lot of the outside influences. Okay, my name is John Williams, and I've lived in Maysville since 1949. Came here when I was 3 years old. Maysville became a town about 1902. The railroad came in about 1910, and it came as a spur in order to be able to carry not only crops, like maybe wheat, corn, and cattle and broom corn, but also oil products. At one time there were about 5 cotton gins here also. So it was very much a agricultural based community. Well, about the 1930s, one of our favorite sons came to light. That was Wiley Post. And he was very active in this part of the state, but his folks lived north of town. Well, he was very successful with Phillips Petroleum. However, in 1935, as the history books will tell you, that he and Will Rogers had a crash, airplane crash up in Point Barrow, Alaska, where both of them were killed. After the 30s, the 40s hit, and the first part of the 40s, 1941, was when World War II started. Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. Maysville is proud to proclaim that the first Native American killed in World War II was from Maysville, Oklahoma. And he still has family that's here. But he was on the Arizona when it was hit. Well, about the same time in the latter part of the 40s, Warren Petroleum, W.G. Warren was a man who knew how to refine and produce oil. So they came and they built a plant about 1948, and it was a production plant. And they took whatever was produced, like propane and butane and isobutane and a lot of other products that is derived from natural oil, and they put it in railroad tank cars here in Maysville, and the cars were loaded, they were sent off. Also, when the plant came, it was a great influx of new people, new thinking people. It wasn't just our farmers, who are wonderful, and they supported the community for years and years, but the people came from Texas and Arkansas and New Mexico, and they came to work at the plant. Well, with them that came the fact that we're in this little small community in Oklahoma. Gosh, we need a better school. Or we're in this little community in Oklahoma. They don't have any ball fields. We need some ball fields. So a lot of those things were started by this new influx of people coming into the Maysville area. New thinkers, new ideas, new things going on. Well, in the 50s, which were part of these people, Maysville won a couple of state championships in football, and everybody was proud of that. We did have some guys that went to Korea during the war, and we have one fatality there in Korea that's buried in our cemetery. First Baptist Church built a new building in the 50s. Burford Corporation, which makes the twisty tie that keeps your loaf of bread together, was started in the 50s. New things added to the school, like hot lunch program was started during that time. Bob Lou was involved in that. So there are lots of new things that were happening. In the 1960s, we had a new Methodist church. We had a large housing development. There was a area out by the plant where there was about 20 homes out there for plant employees. Well, the liability became so great because of just the fact that we were dealing with petroleum products out there. The city fathers of Maysville bought a 10-acre stretch just to the west of the grade school and moved all those houses into town so they would have an opportunity to help our town grow and keep our school enrollments up, and also our retail, keep it going. So that was done in the 50s. In the 70s, after Vietnam, we added on to the grade school. We did some improvements at the high school. The school has always been a main part of our community to keep it strong. We had grade school improvements, high school improvements. Also, coming into town, leaving town, both east and west, north and south, is a white way lighting system, which was a pretty big deal for us at that time. It was a new lighting put in as you approach our community. That was always good. Our fire department increased during those times, during the late 70s and 80s, going from just one old truck to about 5 old trucks, plus a new station. And we always laugh and said we wouldn't have had any of that if it hadn't been for about 4 women on the council. They really got in there and got things done. So they'll always be remembered concerning that. Another thing that happened in the 80s was the sales tax increase, and what that did was to take money and set it aside for taking care of our streets only, nothing else. There was a portion of that, and at the same time we set aside funds for a library. And for a town our size, we're very fortunate to have a public library, which is open regular normal hours during the week. The 70s, the Maysville Wiley Post Lake was put in, so we had a water supply like a lot of communities didn't have, and also a water treatment center out there by the lake. We also, during the 70s and 80s, Maysville was able to build a swimming pool. They were also built tennis courts, and during that time we also had more school improvements that were good for our community. In the 2000s, some things started kind of happening. We ended up with Walmart stores on 3 sides of us, and that did a lot to hurt our retail businesses. We had clothing stores, we had barber shops, we had tractor farm equipment stores. We had a number of retail businesses that faltered because of the fact that people were more mobile and they could go to these adjoining towns there and shop at Walmart. So that kind of hurt us a little bit. Another thing started happening too. A lot of these farmers that had been around for years and years and years, they started retiring, they started passing away, and their properties would be combined with other properties where you might have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 large farm interests that would gather all of these up, and which would minimize the number of families that you had. And when you minimize the number of families, that minimizes the number of kids, your school enrollment starts feeling a little nudge there of loss of census. Well, that kind of happened, and we did, however, during that time, a new bank was built in town. We already had one, but we built a new bank, which was an excellent piece of progress. Large farms continued on. Farm families started kind of diminishing a little bit. School improvements. We had one gentleman who was involved with the oil production that donated about I think it was about $100,000 for our school farm out west of town, which was wonderful. And we use it constantly all the time now. As my dad said one time, I think I'm losing my looks. And I think that's what's happening to our town. We're losing our looks. We're just a small rural community that's been affected by a lot of the outside influences. And we've kind of picked up in some areas, we've gone downhill in other areas.